Hi everyone, today we're doing Polka-Dot Cheesecake Brownies. Found this in a Betty Crocker cookbook. That's a 9 by 13 inch pan that I put foil in with some foil hanging over the edges and then greasing the foil with cooking spray. For the brownie layer, you're going to use a brownie mix. Any kind will do as long as it's about the 16-ounce package, the big package. And you're going to make these according to package directions by adding the eggs, oil, and water that they ask for on the back of the box. You can also use a scratch recipe for this if you would like. Mix up the brownies and pour the batter into the 9 by 13 inch pan. Spread out the batter evenly, and then you're going to bake these according to package directions until they are completely baked. And I would suggest that you not over bake them until they're just done and not too dark around the edges. Once they're baked, you're going to let them cool for about 15 minutes. So while your brownies are baking and cooling, make the cheesecake layer, which is 4 8-ounce packages of cream cheese that's been brought to room temperature, about a teaspoon or a little more of vanilla, and 1 cup of white granulated sugar. And then using electric mixer or by hand, you're going to beat those things together until you get a nice fluffy light mixture. And then add 4 eggs, one at a time, blending after each addition. Max is helping me out with this. And then add 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And once that's blended in, you will have something that's very light, very fluffy. And you could almost just eat that with a spoon. It's really good stuff. Now, to make the polka dots, we're going to add some food coloring to some cheesecake batter. So that's 1/2 cup of cheesecake batter and a little bit of paste food coloring. And the colors are completely up to you. The colors in the cookbook, which I really liked, were pink and brown. So this is the pink, and for the brown, I'm mixing 1/2 cup of the cheesecake batter with 1 ounce of melted semi-sweet chocolate. And I melted them right in that bowl, right in the microwave. And I used semi-sweet chocolate chips. Blend the cheesecake and the chocolate together, and that's going to give you your brown color. And I decided to try for a 3rd color for this batch. And I have some neon food colors, and this is kind of like a lime green that I'm mixing here. And I've always found that lime green, pink, and brown are colors that go very nicely together. So I thought I would give that a try. And that's 1/2 cup of each. And just keep adding color until you get something that you like. And what I did was place the colored cheesecake batter into piping bags. And I put my piping bag into a tall drinking glass. And just so it's easier to pour the batter in by folding the edges of the piping bag over top of the glass and then just scraping in the colors. And there's all 3 of them in the piping bags. These are disposable ones that I have. There are the brownies that have come out of the oven. They've been cooled for about 15 minutes or so. I over-baked these a tiny bit. The edges were a little bit dark, but it turned out they were fine, and you'll see at the end result. It turned out really good. So there are the brownies, and you're going to pour the batter, cheesecake batter, the white cheesecake batter over top of that and spread it out nicely. It's okay if the brownies are still a little bit warm. That doesn't make much of a difference. And then I cut the end of the piping bag off, and then I'm just going to make polka dots. And the size and the spacing and the number of polka dots you put is completely up to you. You just kind of use your imagination and your creativity and come up with something that you think looks nice. So I started off with making big polka dots, and then I added some smaller ones. Once your polka dots are all done, you're going to put this in the oven at 325 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes until the cheesecake layer is set, which means when you touch it, it's not jiggly anymore. Also, I would suggest instead of using 1/2 cup of each color, I would use only 1/4 cup of each color because there's just actually way too much of the colored part. There's a cheesecake just out of the oven. You can see that it cracked. I always have cracking problems on my cheesecake. I think it's because I overbake them just slightly and it causes the cracking. Then let it cool at room temperature for an hour or so, and then refrigerate it and chill it thoroughly, about 2 hours. And once it's chilled thoroughly, you can remove it from the pan and cut it into squares. And that's what I did here. The reason I'm removing it and putting it back in the container is that I cut it up, put it in the container, and then I brought it to work. This is way too good to keep at home because I would have eaten it all myself. So I brought it to work and shared it with the coworkers, and they loved it too. The cheesecake is fantastic. It's got the nice chocolate dots that adds a nice chocolate flavor. The brownies are not overdone. They're not overbaked. They're not dry. A lot of the moisture from that cheesecake goes into the brownie and keeps it very moist, and it's a really fantastic dessert, and I think it looks really cute. This is actually a second attempt at these. I did make them once already a while ago. Attempt number 1 was a fail, and here is what I did. And what I did was I followed the recipe exactly, and I found that there was a definite flaw in the recipe. Starting off, you make the brownies, you put them in the oven, but what they tell you to do is to bake the brownies only for 10 minutes, and then to take them out. And so I made my cheesecake layer, did that exactly the same way as you just saw, except in this case, they want you to take a 1 cup to dye pink and 1 cup to mix with the chocolate. Now, you can see the brownie layer. So I'm spooning on the cheesecake part. You can see ripples in it. That brownie was not baked at all. Barely baked. The edges were just a tiny little bit baked, but the center was completely raw. But you know what? First time I make this, they say 10 minutes. I did 10 minutes. And I think the problem was maybe it was a glass pan. The glass pan insulates a little more than a metal pan. And it could be that they didn't bake enough. But they most certainly did not bake enough. 10 minutes was not enough time at all. Another problem was there's just way too much of the colored batter. I mean, you ended up putting all the polka dots and you had a whole bunch left over. It was just too much. That's why I reduced it to a 1/2 cup in the recipe that I show you. After I baked this and cooled it completely and tried to cut it, I realized immediately there was something wrong, and the brownie layer did not bake at all. So that's after 10 minutes on its own and another 35 with the cheesecake on top. It didn't bake. It's just like batter, soggy and squishy like mud, and it was a total fail. So to salvage it, I took some of the cheesecake layer off. We ate that separately, and that's why I am asking you to bake that brownie completely before you put the cheesecake on, and then it turns out fantastic. So live and learn, and why don't you give this one a try?